Remember when I asked you all to send me questions for a Q&A? I have not forgotten about that, despite it being like 3 months. Better late than never. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Tommaso T asks, what is street photography? Seems like a stupid question, but if you ask different people, you'll get radically different answers. And I definitely agree with that. Everyone has their own answer. I guess the real answer is whatever you make of it, right? But I think we can all agree that there is a genre of photography that we can group together and call it street photography. I don't think you can have a really definitive definition with such a general term, street photography. By that name alone, you'd assume it would just mean photography on a street, but we know that street photography is much more than that. I used to personally use the definition candid photography of the human presence, and for the most part I felt like that really worked for how I would describe street photography. But recently I've really enjoyed Alex Webb's definition of street photography. He describes it as an attitude of curiosity, exploration, and discovery. And I love that definition because I feel like it really epitomizes what street photography is. It's not so much a style or approach, because really street photography is more of a way of seeing, and I think that definition, even though it is vague as well, I think it takes into account all the different approaches, all the different styles that one can have with street photography. How old are you, and when did you get into photography at all? I am 26 years old. I either just made some of you feel very young or very old saying that. I picked up photography through my dad as a kid. Eventually, he let me use his camera. I was always fascinated by it, and that kind of led me to taking a class in high school where I learned the fundamentals. So we used film cameras, we learned manual exposure, processing and developing in the darkroom, printmaking as well. It was a fun class, and it really helped me understand photography as something much more than just taking pictures at a family gathering, right? It opened my eyes that photography could be this art form. Hey, you know what? It's kind of boring doing this here. Let's do this somewhere else. Hope you don't mind going into my bag. Bye. Alright, so today we're rocking the GR3X. I've got this new prototype hood from Square Hood. It's made specifically for the GR and the GR3X. I've also got one of Woltencraft's newest paracord straps on here. This is the Peak Design Anchor version. Photographers, what do we think of these gloves? Yay or nay? Cozy Analogs asks, what was your biggest challenge when first starting out on YouTube? The biggest challenge for me was actually just starting a channel, because for the longest time, I think it was 2+ years, I wanted to make a street photography YouTube channel. But I had all these plans for it to be so perfect that I never actually started it. That perfectionism in the beginning really held me back from starting a lot earlier than I did. I think coming to terms with it being a slow growing process. The first video I'm gonna make is not gonna be perfect. It's not even gonna be that good. If I don't start somewhere and make something, I'm not gonna make any YouTube channel. So personally, I found that GoPro POVs was a nice way of me to gradually get into the process of making videos, because I was already going out and doing street photography anyway. Just strapping a GoPro on and taking video of myself taking photos was an easy way for me to ease into the process. RKB13 asks, how do you conceptualize and execute the sort of still videography that's become part of your recent videos? I tend to see photos first, but I will admit, since starting a YouTube channel, there have been a lot of instances where I've wanted to get a video before I've wanted to get a photo. But I think that's a natural thing because we see life moving, right? So if I see a scene happening, I'm basically seeing the video playing out in front of me. But really how I see video is built off of how I see photos. A lot of the times when I'm traveling, I'm doing both at the same time, so I find it somewhat difficult going between the two, but I've tried to make it a habit to photograph the moment first, and if the moment allows for it, I'll then switch over to video and get some footage.
It's Black Friday, so a lot of people take the day off, right? So the financial district's gonna be completely empty today. It's more of the commercial shopping areas that are gonna be really full of people, which is why we're going to Faneuil Hall. I think part of street photography is setting yourself up for success. And if you're just going out aimlessly walking around, I mean, that's more or less how I shoot most of the time. But if I want to get photos, I'll do things to put myself in position to get photos. So if it's people that I'm trying to photograph, I'm going to go where I think most people are going to be, which is why I turned this corner to a completely empty street. Turn around.
Bob asks, if you could only use one lens with one angle of view, which one would you use? I think for me that answer would have to be the 35mm focal length. I just feel like 35 fits the sweet spot for everyday life. Most of my street photography tends to be with longer focal lengths. That's my street photography style. I approach documenting my daily life, my friends and family with wider lenses more often than not. I just feel like 35 is like the best all-around lens to have for photographing pretty much everything. Denims33 asks, is there anything you do when you feel stuck or not improving? If so, then how do you get to that next level? Improvement is also somewhat subjective because at a certain point you fully understand the concepts, the fundamentals of operating a camera, understanding exposure and whatnot. So there will come a point where your improvement changes, and what you might consider improvement is not the same as what you would consider improvement 1 year ago or 2 years ago. So improvement might come in other places, such as the photography networks you build, growing your photography business, or for a lot of other people, it's finding their voice or style in photography. And I think achieving that next level might actually just involve understanding where you're at in photography right now, and understanding that it's going to change over time as you evolve, as you become inspired by other things. Winslow asks, in street photography there seems to be a lot of rights and wrongs, the best lenses to use, and lenses that aren't as conventional. I admire the fact you traditionally use longer focal lengths because they work for you. How do you feel about using certain lenses for street photography versus others? You know, I think that's what it comes down to, right? Just use whatever works best for you, whatever works best for the kind of image you're trying to create. Everyone is going to be different in how they approach something, and I feel like a lot of photographers, mostly the ones that are pretty vocal on the internet, have their own rules and how they like to do things, and that's totally fine. You can make those rules for yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. But the second you start to tell people that there's a right or wrong way, then you just become, let me put this kindly,
I love you, but you are not serious people.
As it relates to using certain lenses for street photography versus others, I actually quite enjoy using every focal length, to be honest. I know I tend to use longer focal lengths in most of my work, but that's because I really feel like they really help me create the kind of feeling I want to evoke in my photography right now. Alex Greenway 21 asks, is there a genre of photography that you don't really like? And if you weren't taking street photos, is there any genre that you would really like to try? Personally, I actually want to get back into taking portraits. It's something I did a lot of when I was first starting out in photography. There really isn't a genre of photography that I don't like. I mean, AI photography, because it's not photography. If I wasn't taking street photos though, I probably would be like a landscape nature photographer. Sunchild August 4940 asks, have you ever been in a situation where someone caught you snapping a photo? If so, what happened? Are there ever situations where you ask for a photo of someone? I don't ever ask for a photo unless I'm intending on taking like a street portrait. That's the only situation I'll ever ask someone. And there's plenty of times where people have seen me taking a photo of them 99.9% of the time, and with them not saying anything to me. You know, my approach really isn't to get super close to people, so oftentimes I look like I'm not actually photographing someone, so I don't get as many interactions as others. You know, it's not my intention to make anyone feel uncomfortable, so if anyone asks me to not take their photo, so I'm going to listen to them and respect that. The DM side asks, how often do you go out to record a POV video? Do you go out without that intention? So I actually usually record all of my POV videos with the intention of making a video out of it. I really don't worry too much about capturing my best photos for these videos. I feel like, if anything, it's a more realistic look at any other day I go out to shoot. It's not as realistic as it can be because I'm still cutting through this video and mostly showing the photos I felt were feasible to be looked at by a human eye. But really, at the end of the day, it's not so much about showing the best photos I've taken. It's more so to just show a normal day of taking photos. I want to take a quick moment to talk about today's sponsor, Squarespace. They're an all-in-one platform for creatives to design and build their own online portfolio and grow their creative businesses further. You don't even need to be a professional photographer to have your own website. That's something I used to think. But since starting my own website on Squarespace, I found it was just a better way to present my images to people besides the conventional Instagram page. I've been using their product for the past 7 years, which makes me feel really old. And while my website has changed a lot over that time, building my website on Squarespace has always been a seamless experience. But don't take my word for it. Try it out for yourself. You can use the link squarespace.com/Faisal and use the code Faisal to get 10% off your first purchase. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Overcome 174 asks, any tips for night street photography? You know, I don't shoot at night that much, but my biggest tip is probably to actually underexpose a bit and embrace high ISO. Also, black and white edits are your friend. David Cabra asks, what's the best outfit and shoes for street? You know, you might not think about it much, but how you present yourself on the street is actually going to have some impact to the way people might, react to you taking photos. I feel like if you dress nicely and look well kept, people are going to feel a bit less threatened by you. Around this time, you can't go wrong with a nice wool winter coat. As for shoes, you gotta go with something you can walk in all day, obviously. Usually for me, it's running shoes. I'm a big New Balance fan, but today I'm rocking some Salomon XT6 Expanses. I mean, the real answer to this question, though, is whatever you feel the most confident in. That's some sage fashion advice right there. Do with it what you will. Mr. Felix Clement asks, what do you use for music licensing? All of my music comes from MusicBed and Artlist. I find those are the two best when it comes to music selection. Okitokso asks, how do you earn money with photography or other ways? I'm a full-time creator on YouTube, so I make money from a variety of different income streams. The biggest being video sponsors, the digital products that I sell in my store, YouTube payments through views, that's also known as AdSense money, and then I also get a small amount of money through affiliate commissions. So outside of my prints or zines, I really make no money directly through my photography. It's all indirectly through my YouTube channel. Christopher Martin asks, how do you fit street photography in with a 9-to-5? I actually mentioned this in one of my recent videos, practical tips for better photos. You know, I don't have a 9-to-5 job, but a lot of my friends do, and the way they do it is just by incorporating it into their daily routine. Literally, they bring their camera with them every day to work, and when they get out of work, they take photos on their way back home, or just spend a few hours around the city taking photos. One of the tips I mentioned was adding it to your commute, so maybe it means waking up a bit earlier in the morning and getting off the bus stop or train stop earlier and walking the rest of the distance to your job. And just that added time of walking down the street in the city with your camera opens up a lot more opportunity for you to take photos. Obviously, this doesn't apply to everyone. Not everyone works in the city. At the end of the day, it's all about finding the time to do street photography. So if that means bringing your camera with you wherever you go, then you're just going to be that much more likely to take photos. If you don't bring your camera with you, you're 100 times less likely to take photos. James asks, looking at getting 1 to 2 Fuji primes for my X-T2, any recommendations on what to get? I already have a 18 to 55. If you're looking for some variety, maybe the 23mm f2 and the 50mm f2. I'm a big fan of the f2 lenses just because they're super compact, and really I have no need for anything that can open wider than f2 for the kind of photography I do. But you might differ. Obviously, this whole answer really depends on what you like to shoot. But if we're looking for all-around usage to go with that 18 to 55, probably a 23 and a 50. What would you do when you're in a creative rut? I've made videos on this in the past, but what I like to do when I'm in a rut is to look for inspiration through books, take time away from Instagram, away from social media, and switch things up with how I approach photography. So that could mean using a different camera I haven't used in a long time, using a different focal length, shooting in a new location or a location I haven't shot in a long time. Changing those types of elements in my process always invigorates me because it's different. Sometimes you need to do something different in order to get yourself out of a rut.
Ooh, that's a picture. That was. Did you get him?
Yeah, he looks so sad though.
Daniel Delgado asks, how would you use your photography to show your love and appreciation for someone? I really love that question. I think what I would do is if I had a photo of them that I haven't shared with them before, I would just send it to them out of the blue. I feel like that's the best way I would do it. Yeah, because I feel like people always appreciate a nice photo of themselves, especially when it comes from their resident photography friend. Alright guys, that's going to be it for me. This video is getting a bit long. I'm down to make another one of these and continue answering your questions. Sorry it took a long time to make this video, but I hope it helped. I hope some of these answers helped some of you. With that said, thanks for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.